Warning: the events depicted in this video are real and may not be suitable for children or some viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. Today's case took place in the year 1978 in Las Vegas, Nevada, USA. The story revolves around a 15-year-old girl named Mary Vanson. Her father was a military man, which turned their home into a disciplined place. Her mother worked in a casino, and she had 6 siblings, a mix of boys and girls. Obviously, the atmosphere at home was quite tense, which wasn't out of the ordinary due to the frequent conflicts between the father and the mother, which almost escalated to the level of deploying heavy artillery and tanks. The atmosphere at home was extremely tense, and this intense domestic battle between them had been ongoing for years, with no signs of stopping or any reconciliation. In this tense environment, Mary Vanson developed a deep passion for dancing from a young age. Las Vegas, known for its vibrant nightlife and entertainment scene, was the perfect place for her dreams to flourish. The city's numerous clubs and casinos were constantly buzzing with artistic performances, and dancing was highly sought after in the 1970s. Mary dreamed of becoming one of the leading figures in the art scene in a dynamic city like Las Vegas. However, her parents were not interested in her talent. They were preoccupied with their marital problems, which only worsened over time. The tense family atmosphere was stifling for Mary, who from a young age was rebellious and refused to accept the situation at home. She began to defy her father's orders, who treated them like soldiers in a barracks. Gradually, she started to break free from her father's control, and her desire to escape the oppressive environment at home grew stronger. Mary started going out and staying out late with her friends, often returning home late at night. Naturally, her father was not happy with this behavior. One night, she didn't come home at all. The next day, her sister warned her that their father was furious and planning to punish her when he got back. Mary didn't overthink much. She quickly gathered what belongings she could, stuffed them into a bag and hit the road, escaping with the drifters into the unknown. You might wonder where a 15-year-old girl could go. Mary herself didn't know, but in her teenage mind, anywhere was better than staying at home. To her, any place would be an improvement over the oppressive environment she was trying to leave behind. In brief, when her parents realized she was missing, they began searching for her and asking everyone they could. Among the stories they heard after her disappearance was that she and her boyfriend were heading to SoCal in California. On the way, they slept in the car, and a police patrol checked their IDs, discovering that her boyfriend was wanted for raping a girl. Regardless of what was said about Mary Vanson, she eventually found herself alone, gradually realizing how tough life can be, even in the prime of youth. In the same sequence of events, Mary found herself without food or a place to stay. At night, she would sleep in abandoned buildings or any car she could find unlocked. Eventually, she decided to head to her uncle's place in SoCal, but she didn't stay there long. From there, she made her way to Berkeley to stay with her grandmother. It was evident that Mary never stayed in one place for long, always on the move to find a better situation. In the sequence of Mary's movements on September 21st, 1978, she left Berkeley and stood by the roadside, hitchhiking, looking for anyone who could take her to Los Angeles, or at least get her closer. It's important to understand the concept of hitchhiking, especially in the early 1980s. Back then, hitchhiking was a common means of transportation for many, especially young people, to travel across the United States. Unlike today, where few dare to hitchhike and even fewer stop for hitchhikers unless they have ulterior motives, some people wouldn't stop at all, fearing the unknown dangers. You might recall serial killers like Ted Bundy or Edmund Kemper, who exploited the trust of young women hitchhiking, making it a risky endeavor for girls and students looking for a ride to ease their journey. In the same setting, with the endless wilderness and the unending road, Mary stood shivering, waiting for a car to take her to Los Angeles. As it was getting dark and her feet were freezing from the cold, 2 young men approached her and asked where she was headed. She told them Los Angeles, which was their destination as well. Since they were also hitchhiking, they decided to wait together for a vehicle that would take them all. Fortunately, they didn't have to wait long, as a small covered truck soon stopped for them. The driver was a rough, burly man dressed in a blue worksuit. He mentioned that he was heading to Reno, Nevada, which meant that Mary and the young men she was with were not his intended passengers. However, in an unexpected gesture, he offered to change his route and go to Los Angeles instead. This should have raised some red flags for Mary and her companions, because no one would change their route by nearly 800 kilometers just to do them a favor. The surprise came when he said he could only take one passenger, even though his truck could fit a whole football team with their staff. He added that he only took female passengers, making it clear that he had ulterior motives. This behavior was strange and suspicious, indicating that his intentions were far from honorable. In the flow of these events, the two young men understood that the situation was not safe at all, and tried to convince Mary that if she went with this stranger, she would put herself in danger. But she didn't listen to them, just as she hadn't listened to her parents. She got into the vehicle with the unknown man, without even thinking for a moment why he chose her specifically, and left the other two behind, even though they were also heading to Los Angeles. To keep it short, Mary got into the car with the man, who started driving and introduced himself as Larry. He mentioned that he needed to stop by his house in San Pablo to grab a few things before continuing their journey. Once he gathered what he needed, they hit the road towards Los Angeles. With the long trip ahead, Larry turned on the car radio to play some music.
Heartbeats racing, where to go? See the lights, they come and go. Drive slow. Windows down, the breeze so fine.
At this stage of Mary's journey with the man named Larry, the road still stretched long and endless. Mary noticed that Larry was secretly drinking while driving, hiding the alcohol in a coffee cup to avoid suspicion. As night fell and the darkness deepened, she felt him starting to move his hand towards her thigh. She moved closer to the door to avoid his touch. Exhausted from the journey, she eventually fell into a deep sleep. When she woke up, she was gripped by a strange feeling of fear. Reading the road signs, she realized that they were heading back towards Nevada, not Los Angeles. Larry had left the highway and taken a different road, and that's when Mary's real nightmare began. Mary began thinking about how she could escape from this man. She reached beside her seat, hoping to find something, and found a small club. She pulled it out and confronted Larry, accusing him of deliberately changing the route and not intending to take her to Los Angeles. She demanded that he turn around and take her back to where she had been. Larry started apologizing, swearing that he had simply made a mistake and hadn't done it intentionally. After making a U-turn and getting back on the highway, he suddenly veered off the road again into a deserted area in the middle of mountains and desert. Mary realized that Larry was planning to take her to a remote place and understood what awaited her. Larry stopped at the side of the road and told her he needed to relieve himself. He got out of the truck, and Mary seized the opportunity. She quietly unfastened her seatbelt and tied her shoelaces tightly to be ready to run. She opened the truck door and dashed out, but she didn't realize that Larry was a tough opponent. He quickly caught up with her and hit her on the head with a hammer. When she fell, he continued to strike her until she lost consciousness. When she woke up, she found herself in the back of a truck, tied up, naked, and Larry was fucking her. She felt a lot of pain from the previous blow, which made her unconscious to what was happening. Larry's actions grew more violent, like it was not enough that he was fucking her. He hit her until she lost consciousness again. When she regained consciousness, she was outside the truck, being dragged by Larry. Without forgetting that she, a 15-year-old girl, Mary started crying, pleading with him to let her go. Larry told her that he would let her go, but it was clear he had other plans. Larry walked to his truck and opened a metal box that contained his work tools. He took out a large axe and approached her directly. He grabbed her left arm and struck it at the elbow. Imagine the intensity of the pain she felt. She started screaming and writhing as blood flowed. Larry, ignoring her pleas, struck again to completely sever the arm. The poor girl, in immense pain, could only grab Larry with her right hand and continue to scream and beg for mercy. Naturally, she started to feel dizzy from the blood loss, but Larry was unfazed. Standing in the pool of blood beneath Mary, he looked for a way to take her right hand while she continued to call for help in vain. In this terrifying moment, Larry wanted to cut Mary's right hand, but she resisted fiercely, using all her strength to kick and twist to prevent him. Despite her resistance, he continued to strike with the axe until her hand was severed from her body. She was left in a pool of blood, the pain unimaginable. Even after her hand was cut off, her fingers clung to Larry's clothes. Mary, a teenager, suffered immensely and ultimately succumbed to her injuries. Larry dragged her and threw her from a height, causing more injuries. Her suffering didn't end as he continued to mistreat her even after the fall. Larry started pushing her with his foot until he managed to place her into the opening of a drainage system, making sure she wouldn't be found easily. Satisfied that no one would discover her in such an isolated place, he returned to his truck. He felt confident that no one would identify her without her hands, which were cut off in the circumstances that had transpired. However, Larry's assumptions were wrong. Mary didn't die but fell into a deep coma, appearing almost lifeless. When she awoke, she felt immense pain in her severed hands and realized the extent of her blood loss. Additionally, the blow to her head with the hammer had caused a severe concussion, leading to even greater suffering. She felt herself slipping back into unconsciousness, but this time she was certain that if she closed her eyes, she would pass away. That's why she continued to fight, knowing that surrendering would mean that the criminal Larry would continue his heinous acts freely and inflict the same horror on other girls that he had inflicted on her. At this point in the case, you should know that Mary is originally from the Philippines. Born and raised in a rural, tribal environment, she learned many things there, including how to stop bleeding from wounds. She knew that if she pressed the bleeding area into the ground, the bleeding would stop. Moreover, if she kept her severed arms elevated, it would prevent the blood from flowing down. This is exactly what she did. As for what happened afterward, Mary doesn't remember well, but her instinct to survive kept her moving forward. She somehow climbed out of that 9-meter-high drop and made her way to the main road. The only thing Mary could remember was that she was naked, her hands severed, covered in blood and dirt, wandering in the middle of the road. The few cars that passed by were terrified by the sight and didn't stop to help her, thinking she was some kind of apparition. To keep it brief, Mary was lucky because a newly married couple on their way to Las Vegas for their honeymoon found her. They had taken a wrong turn, which led them to encounter her. They asked her what had happened, then suggested taking her to the hospital. However, she insisted on going to the police first to tell her story. They agreed and took her to the police station. When the officers saw her deteriorating condition, they realized she was on the brink of death and rushed her to the hospital. The medical team worked tirelessly for hours to save her life. Mary spent over a month in intensive care. When she woke up from the coma, she found the detectives waiting to question her. Naturally, she gave them all the details of the assault, starting from when she hitchhiked in Berkeley. She provided a very detailed description of her attacker, Larry, as his image was etched in her mind and would never be erased. The question that arises here is whether Mary was Larry's first victim. At this stage of the case, after Mary left the hospital, she went to a specialist who fitted her with the latest prosthetic arms. The first thing she thought of was finding any trace of her attacker, Larry, so that the police could catch him and prevent another tragedy. She feared he might have had victims before her or might harm others after her. The first thing the police did was release a composite sketch of the criminal to the media based on the detailed description Mary provided. They urged anyone with information about Larry to contact the nearest police station. 10 days after Larry's photo was seen by Americans, a woman named Joan Nevinson contacted the police to provide more information about the published image. She believed she recognized the man from about 13 years ago. He lived near her in the Reno area According to her, he still owns a house there. The police, of course, asked for more details. She said the man is in his 50s. His name is Lawrence Bernard Sinclair, and he is known as Larry. Furthermore, according to Joan, Larry's wife had passed away, which is why he moved from his house. She also provided another piece of information about his alcohol addiction. She confirmed that whenever he drank, he completely transformed, becoming a ferocious beast that spared no one. She expressed that she still had doubts about whether the man in the picture was indeed Larry she knew well. She asked about the color of the truck he had, and the officers told her it was blue. She then confirmed that he was the criminal without any doubt. In the same sequence of events, the police searched their files for this person, Lawrence Bernard Singleton, known as Larry. They found out that he was from Florida, had been married twice, and had 2 children. His record included offenses for drunk driving, but that was minor compared to the current case. He was involved in a much more serious crime of abduction. When questioned about what happened on September 21st, 1978, Larry admitted to picking up a teenage girl but claimed he couldn't remember her name or appearance. He only confirmed that he took her to his house, they drank together, and had sexual intercourse. He insisted that it was consensual and emphasized this point. Afterward, he claimed to have forgotten everything because he drank too much. According to his story, he wasn't sure if the girl was Mary. As on the way, 2 young men hitchhiked and he let all 3 of them off at the same place. The police asked him where exactly he let them off, but he couldn't give a clear answer. He claimed that the 2 young men were the ones who raped the girl and cut off her hands while he was asleep. When he woke up, he found one of them driving his truck. The story he told the police didn't make any sense, so they searched Larry's house. They found that his truck freshly washed. When the officers inspected it thoroughly, they found an axe hidden behind the door, still stained with blood. In the course of these events and investigations, the detectives decided to arrest Larry as his guilt became evident. In March 1979, his trial began in San Diego. Mary, with great courage, was present and stood before the judge, facing her tormentor. She recounted the details of the assault from the moment she hitchhiked to her abduction, rape, the severing of her hands, and being thrown off the cliff. However, when the judge announced the sentence, the shock was heavy on Mary, her family, friends, and those who supported her through her ordeal. Larry was sentenced to only 14 years in prison. This sentence did not match the severity, brutality, and monstrosity of his actions. For Mary, what he did was akin to killing her, and perhaps it would have been better if he had. Larry showed no remorse for his actions. On the contrary, he seemed to relish the sight of Mary wearing prosthetics in court. The most disturbing part was when he passed by her quietly as he left the courtroom, saying, "If I get the chance, I'll finish what I started," implying he intended to kill her. In this phase of the case, poor Mary remained terrified, knowing that once this criminal was released from prison, he would likely come after her to kill her. She kept telling herself that by the time he was released, God would protect her. But in 1987, a shocking surprise occurred. Larry was released on parole due to good behavior, as he had no prior convictions and was considered an exemplary prisoner. Despite the fact that all prisoners are considered exemplary, what else could they do behind bars? When Larry was released, he was 60 years old. His lawyer assured everyone that there was no need to fear him anymore, as he was now an old man. But the authorities faced great difficulty finding a place for him to live, as no city in Nevada wanted him, and there were demonstrations demanding that he not be allowed to live near them. As a result, he was forced to live in a caravan, a mobile home that the authorities placed in the yard of San Quentin prison. In this same context, after Larry was released from prison, he spent a year living in that caravan with no issues or troubles. After a while, he decided to return to his hometown in Tampa, Florida. The people there, like the rest of the Americans who knew his story, were extremely upset and rejected him. They went as far as paying him $5,000 to leave the city and held demonstrations in Tampa. They even tried to blow up his house with a homemade bomb, but he survived. To not prolong the story, you should know that Larry continued his criminal behavior. He was arrested again and served 2 months in prison for stealing a $10 camera. A month and a half after his release, he was caught stealing a $3 hat and tried to give a false identity. However, everyone knew who he was by then, and the judge did not show him any mercy, sentencing him to 2 full years in prison. The surprising twist is that the very community that once rejected him now supported him, especially a group known as People's Helpers. They started considering him a good man because he helped them in many ways. He lent them his DIY tools, helped fix things in their homes for free. In this same context, Larry was far from the ideal neighbor that everyone thought he was. He often had prostitutes over at his house, including a woman named Roxanne, who was 31 years old. She was married, still living with her husband, and had 3 children. Roxanne had a tragic past. She was sexually assaulted at the age of 2 by her grandfather, who continued to abuse her until he died when she was 6. After that, her alcoholic father took over, raping her every time he came home drunk. Roxanne endured this until she was 14, when she ran away and fell into a life of homelessness, drugs, and delinquency. She had her first child at 20. Understandably, Roxanne's record was filled with arrests, having been detained 99 times in 11 years. On February 19, 1997, Roxanne went to Larry's house for the 3rd time. That day, he was drunk and aggressive. As soon as he saw her, he started to assault her. Meanwhile, one of his neighbors came by, thinking he would help Larry with some painting touch-ups. When the neighbor knocked on the door, Larry didn't answer. Hearing a woman's screams, the neighbor went around and entered through the back door to see what was happening. The scene he witnessed was shocking. Larry was naked, sitting on top of a naked woman lying on the couch, and there was blood everywhere. The neighbor, horrified, ran out and told his uncle what he had seen. They both returned and looked through the window, seeing Larry stabbing Roxanne with a knife. They immediately went to a nearby kiosk and called 911. Unfortunately, by the time the police arrived, Roxanne was dead, having been stabbed at least 6 times. In the same sequence of events, the police went to Larry's house and arrested him. During questioning, he claimed that Roxanne was under the influence of cocaine and had threatened him with a knife, demanding money. He said he struggled with her to take the knife away, and she was accidentally stabbed. However, Roxanne's body had more than 6 stab wounds, making his story hard to believe. Interestingly, just 3 weeks before killing Roxanne, Larry had attempted suicide by carbon monoxide poisoning. His neighbors noticed and stopped him, taking him to a mental hospital where he stayed for a week before being released. In the midst of these events, after Larry's release from prison, Mary, now 35 years old, was called upon by the judge to testify at Larry's trial. Mary, who had endured so much, showcased incredible resilience and determination. Despite her prosthetic hands and the traumatic experiences she had faced, she stood strong. Mary's life was a testament to her courage, even after her family rejected her and she was unable to complete her education initially. She didn't give up. She enrolled in a school for students with disabilities, despite being capable of attending a regular public school. Her classmates' rejection didn't deter her. Mary went through many psychological struggles, but never lost her spirit. She returned to her studies, graduated from high school, and eventually got married. At 22 in 1985, she had her first child, and though her husband seemed distant, perhaps due to her disability, she continued to persevere. Mary joined the Nevada School of Fine Arts and faced severe financial difficulties. She was even evicted from her home with her child and struggled to afford repairs for her prosthetic hands. Now, let's shift our focus back to Larry and the consequences of his actions. At this stage of the case, Lawrence Bernard Singleton, or Larry, faced the death penalty. He asked for forgiveness for what he did to Roxanne, but he never mentioned Mary at all. He completely ignored her ordeal. Consequently, Mary never received the $2.6 million in compensation that was awarded to her by the court. However, Mary's courage and determination led to significant change. She was instrumental in the creation of the Singleton Law in 1987, which prevents parole for criminals who have tortured their victims. Mary's life, despite its many challenges, took a turn for the better. After 2 divorces, she finally found a man who truly understands her, and they have been happily living together with their 2 children. Mary has also found success in selling her artwork, earning a respectable income from her talent. And that's for our case today. Thank you for joining us on this gripping episode of Untold Crime Stories. The harrowing tale of Lawrence Singleton and Mary Vincent is a stark reminder of the resilience of the human spirit and the importance of justice. If you found this story compelling, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more untold crime stories. Stay tuned for our next episode, where we uncover another chilling case that will leave you on the edge of your seat. Until then, stay safe and stay curious.